I'm Ann, 58 years old, and until recently, I was a dedicated elementary school teacher. After my husband died, financial troubles forced me to sell our home and move in with my son James and his family. Yesterday, he called me into his office with a stern face. "I don't want to feed an extra mouth," he said coldly. "I found you a job at my company." I smiled and agreed, but behind that smile, my heart was breaking. If you're watching this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. My story might surprise you. Life with Harold had been everything I dreamed of. For 35 years, we built a home filled with laughter, mutual respect, and deep love. He worked as an accountant while I taught third grade at Lincoln Elementary. Teaching wasn't just my profession, it was my calling. Watching young minds blossom under my guidance brought me immeasurable joy. James was our only child. We poured all our love into raising him, celebrating his accomplishments and supporting him through difficulties. I remember the pride swelling in my chest when he graduated from college, the first in our family to earn a business degree. Even after he married Amanda and moved to another part of the city, we remained close, or so I thought. Harold and I had modest dreams for retirement, a small garden where Harold could grow tomatoes, maybe traveling to the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone, places we'd always talked about, but never found time to visit. We didn't need much, just each other and the peace we'd earned after decades of working. All those dreams crumbled on a Tuesday morning in April. I was grading papers when the phone rang. Harold had collapsed at the grocery store. By the time I reached the hospital, he was gone. A massive heart attack, they said. No warning, no goodbye, just empty space where my partner of 35 years should be. The weeks after the funeral passed in a blur. Neighbors brought casseroles I couldn't eat. Former students sent cards with heartfelt messages that made me cry. Through it all, James was my rock handling funeral arrangements and staying with me those first few nights. But as the fog of immediate grief began to lift, another cruel reality emerged. Harold had been hiding financial problems from me. Our savings were depleted, the mortgage had fallen behind, medical bills piled up, the life insurance barely covered the funeral expenses. "Mom, we need to talk about what happens next," James said one evening as we sat at the kitchen table surrounded by bills and bank statements. "I'll figure something out," I assured him, though I had no idea what that might be. My teacher's pension wouldn't cover the mortgage and living expenses. "I've been thinking," he continued, "you should sell the house. It's too big for one person anyway, and you'd be better off without the maintenance headaches." "But this is our home," I whispered, looking around at the walls that held 30 years of memories. James reached for my hand. "Mom, you could come live with us? We have the space and the kids would love having you around." The offer seemed like a lifeline. I could be close to my son, spend time with my grandchildren, and start rebuilding my life. After weeks of deliberation and tears, I accepted. The house sold quickly, though, for less than we'd hoped in a buyer's market. Saying goodbye to that house was like burying Harold all over again. I walked through each room, touching walls, remembering Christmas mornings and birthday celebrations. My fingers lingered on the doorframe of the kitchen where Harold had marked James's height each year, the garden where we'd spent summer evenings watching fireflies. My next-door neighbor, Susan, hugged me tightly on moving day. "You'll always have a place here if you need it," she promised. I nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in my throat. The elementary school held a retirement party combined with a farewell gathering. My colleagues presented me with a scrapbook filled with photos and messages from current and former students. Principal Martinez gave a speech that brought everyone to tears. "Ann Thompson didn't just teach reading and arithmetic," he said. "She taught kindness, resilience, and the joy of discovery. Generations of children are better people because they passed through her classroom." I left that school knowing I had made a difference. Now I was ready to begin the next chapter, surrounded by family who loved me. At least, that's what I believed. James and Amanda's home was impressive. A sprawling 2-story house in an upscale neighborhood with manicured lawns and luxury cars parked in circular driveways. My modest sedan looked out of place as I pulled up behind James's Mercedes. "Grandma's here!" shouted Tyler, my 10-year-old grandson, as he raced down the front steps. Emma, 7 years old with pigtails bouncing, was right behind him. "We cleaned out the downstairs room for you," Emma announced proudly as she grabbed my hand. James emerged from the house wearing an expensive suit despite it being Saturday. "Welcome, Mom," he said, giving me a quick hug. "Let me help with your bags." I noticed he didn't say welcome home. Amanda appeared in the doorway, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Anne, so glad you're here," she said with a politeness that felt rehearsed. "The children have been excited all day." The room they'd prepared was in the finished basement, small, with one tiny window near the ceiling. The walls were bare except for a calendar from 2 years ago. A single bed dresser and nightstand constituted the furniture. "We thought you'd appreciate having your own bathroom," James explained, pointing to a door that led to a cramped half-bath. "And this way, you'll have privacy." Privacy or isolation. The rest of the family slept upstairs, separated by a floor and what would soon feel like an emotional chasm. "It's perfect," I lied, setting my handbag on the bed. The mattress sagged in the middle. "Dinner's at 6, Amanda informed me before ushering the children upstairs. "Feel free to rest until then." That first dinner set the tone for what was to come. We sat at their elegant dining table using china plates that probably cost more than a month of my pension. "Grandma, can you come to my soccer game tomorrow?" Tyler asked excitedly. Before I could answer, Amanda interjected. "Tyler, Grandma just moved in. She needs time to adjust before jumping into our hectic schedule." "I'd love to come," I said gently. Amanda's lips tightened. "We're very particular about the children's routines. It's best if you observe for a while before getting involved." James focused intently on cutting his steak, saying nothing to contradict his wife. "Of course," I murmured, noticing how James wouldn't meet my eyes. Over the following days, I discovered the unspoken rules governing my presence in their home. The kitchen was Amanda's domain. My offers to help with cooking were declined. The living room was off-limits after 8 when Amanda wanted quiet time. The backyard patio was reserved for family functions, which apparently didn't include me. I tried to make myself useful. When everyone left in the mornings, James to his executive job, Amanda to her yoga classes and committee meetings, the children to school, I cleaned my small space, then ventured upstairs to dust vacuum or fold laundry. "You don't need to do that," Amanda said sharply when she returned early one day to find me ironing James's shirts. "We have a cleaning service. I just wanted to help," I explained. "Help by staying out of the way," she replied, though not in those exact words. Her meaning was clear nonetheless. The children were my only joy. Tyler would sneak downstairs after school asking for help with math homework. Emma brought her dolls, creating elaborate stories for us to act out. These precious moments always ended with Amanda calling from upstairs, her voice tight with disapproval. "The children have activities, Anne. They can't spend all afternoon down there." One evening, I overheard Amanda talking to James in their bedroom. The heating vent carried their voices straight to my room below. "How long is this arrangement going to last?" Amanda demanded. "What do you want me to do?" James responded. "She's my mother." "She's disrupting our routine. The kids are distracted, and have you seen the grocery bill? Another adult makes a difference. She just lost Dad. She has nowhere else to go. Well, she needs to contribute something. Your charity is admirable, but we have our own family to think about." I pressed my hands against my mouth to stifle a sob. Charity. That's what my presence had become to them, an act of charity rather than family obligation or, heaven forbid, love. That night, I cried into my pillow, missing Harold with an intensity that made my chest physically ache. He would have been horrified to see what had become of our son of our family. In the morning, I dried my tears and put on a brave face. I was determined to make this work, to find a way to become part of their family rather than an unwelcome guest. I had nowhere else to go, and the thought of being completely alone terrified me more than Amanda's cold stares. 2 months after I moved in, James called me into his home office one evening. It was nearly 9 o'clock, and I had been reading in my room, already dressed in my nightgown and robe. The summons felt ominous. James sat behind his large mahogany desk, looking every inch the successful businessman. The warmth and openness that had characterized him as a young man were nowhere to be found in his expression. "Sit down, Mom," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I sat, clutching my robe closed at the neck. "Is everything okay?" He sighed, shuffling some papers before looking up. "We need to talk about your situation." My situation. Your living arrangement here. It's been 2 months. Has there been a problem? I asked, though I knew the answer. I'd been walking on eggshells trying to be invisible while simultaneously proving my worth. James leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Mom, I don't want to sound harsh, but I can't feed an extra mouth indefinitely. The words hit me like physical blows. Extra mouth. Not mother, not family. An extra mouth, a burden to be fed. Amanda and I have the children's college funds to consider our mortgage, our future. We didn't budget for supporting another adult. I understand, I whispered, though what I understood was that my own child was treating me like a financial liability. I've been thinking about this, and I have a solution. His tone became businesslike. I've found you a job. A job, I repeated. At 58, after a career in education and a recent bereavement job hunting had seemed overwhelming. At my company. It's an administrative assistant position in the operations department. Entry level, but the pay should be enough for you to contribute to household expenses. I blinked rapidly, fighting tears. James? I've been a teacher for 30 years. I don't have office experience. He waved dismissively. It's basic stuff, filing, answering phones, scheduling. Anyone can do it. The important thing is that you'll be earning income. I see, I said softly. The position starts Monday. I've already spoken to HR. He slid a folder across the desk. Here's the paperwork. I need you to sign these tonight so I can take them in tomorrow. I opened the folder with trembling hands. The salary listed was barely above minimum wage. After taxes, it would hardly cover what James apparently expected me to contribute to the household. This is a good opportunity, Mom. James continued his tone, suggesting impatience with my hesitation. Many companies wouldn't hire someone your age with no relevant experience. The comment stung. Had my years molding young minds become irrelevant the moment I retired? And frankly, he added, it's the only option right now. I can't continue supporting you indefinitely. I looked up from the papers to study my son's face. Where was the boy who once made me Mother's Day cards promising to take care of me when I was old? Where was the young man who'd wept at his father's funeral, holding me as we grieved together? I searched for any trace of that person in the cold eyes across the desk, but found none. Will I be working directly with you? I asked quietly. No different department entirely. We'll commute separately too. My schedule is unpredictable with meetings. Of course. He wouldn't want his colleagues to connect him with the aging woman in entry-level administration. I'll need to think about this, I said, gathering my courage. James's expression hardened. There's nothing to think about. The job starts Monday. Either you take it and start contributing, or we need to reconsider this living arrangement. The threat was clear. Take the job or find somewhere else to live with no savings, no home, and no prospects. I felt a tear slide down my cheek despite my determination to maintain dignity. Is this really what you want, James, for your mother to work as a clerk in your company to earn her keep in your home? For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, guilt perhaps, or a glimmer of the sun I'd raised. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold resolve. It's not about what I want. It's about reality. Amanda and I have discussed this at length. This is the best solution for everyone. Amanda. Of course, this was her idea, though. James was fully complicit. I signed the papers without further protest, my signature shaky but legible. You've made the right decision, James said, his tone softening slightly. This will be good for you, give you purpose routine. Dad wouldn't want you sitting around grieving forever. How dare he invoke Harold's memory to justify this treatment? My husband would have been appalled. Is that all? I asked, standing up. James nodded. The dress code is business casual. I'll send you the employee handbook by email tomorrow. I walked out of his office with as much dignity as I could muster. Only when I reached my basement room did I allow the tears to flow freely. I cried for the son I'd lost, for the security that had been stripped away for Harold, who wasn't here to hold me through this betrayal. When the tears finally subsided, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the blank wall. A strange calm settled over me. Perhaps this job, unwanted as it was, would be my first step toward independence. I couldn't stay in this house forever, not when I was clearly unwelcome. Maybe this was the push I needed to rebuild my life on my own terms. With that thought providing small comfort, I finally lay down to sleep, preparing myself mentally for what Monday would bring. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and drizzling rain matching my mood perfectly. I woke before my alarm anxiety having kept my sleep light and fitful. Standing before the small mirror in my bathroom, I scrutinized my appearance. The woman staring back at me looked older than I remembered, silver hair neatly styled in a conservative bob lines etching the corners of my eyes and mouth, testament to years of both smiles and sorrows. I applied minimal makeup, just enough to brighten my tired complexion. My hands trembled slightly as I fastened a simple pearl necklace Harold had given me on our 20th anniversary. From my limited wardrobe, I selected a navy blue dress with a matching cardigan, professional but unassuming. Teaching had never required power suits or corporate attire. I slipped on comfortable low heels, knowing I'd be on my feet in an unfamiliar environment. Upstairs, the household was already in its morning chaos. Children gulping breakfast, Amanda barking instructions about after-school activities, James gathering his briefcase and keys. "Good morning," I said, entering the kitchen. The family paused briefly, taking in my appearance. "You look nice, Grandma," Emma said, milk dribbling down her chin. "Thank you, sweetheart," I smiled, reaching for a napkin to dab her face. "Remember, different departments, different schedules," James said without looking up from his phone. "I'll be leaving in 10 minutes. You should probably head out soon to make sure you're not late on your first day." "I thought we might drive together," I suggested. "Save gas, have a chance to talk." James finally glanced up his expression, making it clear this wasn't an option. "I have a breakfast meeting across town first. HR is expecting you at 8:30 sharp." Amanda sipped her coffee, watching the exchange with poorly concealed satisfaction. I nodded, accepting the rejection. "I'll leave now then. Have a good day, everyone." Only the children returned my goodbye as I gathered my purse and a small packed lunch. The drive to Westbrook Corporate Solutions took 20 minutes, giving me time to rehearse positive affirmations. I could do this. I'd faced challenges before. This was just another chapter in my life. The company headquarters was an imposing glass and steel structure downtown. I parked my aging sedan in the farthest corner of the employee lot, feeling self-conscious among the newer, more expensive vehicles. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders and walked toward the entrance, determined to face this new challenge with grace. The reception area buzzed with activity, young professionals striding purposefully across the marble floor, security badges swinging from lanyards, coffee cups in hand. I approached the reception desk, feeling conspicuously out of place. "Good morning. I'm Ann Thompson. Today is my first day." The receptionist, a young woman with immaculately styled hair, glanced up. "New hire human resources is on the 3rd floor." The HR orientation was a blur of paperwork, policy explanations, and system access setups. The HR coordinator, Lisa, was professionally courteous but brisk, clearly accustomed to processing employees as efficiently as possible. "Normally, new hires go through a group orientation, but since you're—" She paused, eyes flicking to my age on the form. "A special placement, we're doing this individually." Special placement. James had pulled strings called in favors, or perhaps even created this position. The realization made me feel even more like a charity case. "Your direct supervisor will be Gerald Watkins in operations support," Lisa continued. "I'll take you to your workspace after we finish here." My workspace turned out to be a small desk in a corner of a large, open office, partially hidden behind a column. The computer looked older than those on neighboring desks. A sticky note with my network login information was attached to the monitor. "Gerald is in a meeting, but he left this for you." Lisa handed me a folder labeled New Hire Tasks. "Bathroom is down the hall to the right, break room is on the left. Any questions?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Lisa nodded and walked away, already focused on her next task. Alone at my desk, I opened the folder to find a list of menial tasks, organizing the supply closet, updating contact spreadsheets, sorting paper files into the correct cabinets. Busy work for the new person, the oldest new person by at least 30 years, I noted, glancing around at my colleagues. Throughout the morning, curious glances came my way. A few brave souls stopped by to introduce themselves, their expressions betraying surprise at finding someone my age in an entry-level position. "Have you worked in corporate before?" asked Melissa, a friendly young woman from the adjacent department. "No, I was a teacher for 30 years. Oh, that's different. What brought you here? The question hung awkwardly between us. I couldn't very well explain that my son considered me a burden and had essentially forced me into this position to pay for my room in his basement. I'm exploring new opportunities, I said instead, the corporate jargon feeling foreign on my tongue. Lunch break found me alone in the corner of the bustling break room, picking at my sandwich while younger employees chatted in groups discussing weekend plans and television shows I'd never heard of. I felt invisible, a ghost, haunting the margins of this vibrant, fast-paced world. The afternoon brought my first real task, photocopying hundreds of pages of reports for an upcoming meeting. As I stood at the copy machine watching pages emerge one by one, I questioned every life choice that had led me to this moment. Had I saved too little, trusted too much, given too freely to a son who now saw me as nothing but an inconvenience? I was so lost in these thoughts that I didn't notice someone approaching until a deep voice spoke beside me. "Excuse me, are you using both machines?" I turned to find an older gentleman in an expensive suit waiting patiently. Something about his distinguished appearance and kind eyes reminded me of Harold. "No, please go ahead," I said, stepping aside to make room. He nodded, thanks, and began setting up his documents. "You're new here." "First day," I confirmed. "I'm in operations support." "Ah, with Gerald. He runs a tight ship, but he's fair." He extended his hand. "William Thompson, by the way." "Ann Thompson," I replied, shaking his hand. His eyebrows rose slightly. "Thompson. Any relation to James Thompson in strategic development?" My stomach tightened. I considered lying, but saw no point. "He's my son." William's expression shifted to one of confusion. "Your son, I wasn't aware James's mother worked here." "It's a recent arrangement," I said carefully. Before he could ask more questions, his phone rang. He checked the screen and frowned. "I need to take this. It was nice meeting you, Anne. Perhaps we'll talk again soon." As he walked away, I noticed the executive floor access card clipped to his belt. Only then did I realize I'd been speaking to William Thompson, the company's CEO. James had mentioned him occasionally a brilliant businessman who had built Westbrook from a small consulting firm to a corporate powerhouse. I returned to my desk, unsettled by the encounter. Would William mention meeting me to James? Would my son be embarrassed? The thought brought no satisfaction, only a deep sadness at how far our relationship had fallen. By 5 o'clock, my feet ached. My eyes strained from inputting data, and my spirit felt thoroughly deflated. As employees around me packed up chatting about evening plans, I gathered my few belongings and headed for the elevator. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for several minutes, too emotionally drained to start the engine. One day down, countless more ahead. Was this really to be my life now? Filing papers and making copies to earn my keep in my son's home. I finally drove home. No, not home to James's house, wondering if this job was a step toward independence or just another form of dependency, this time on my son's professional connections rather than his reluctant charity. Over the next 2 weeks, I settled into a routine of monotonous tasks and quiet invisibility at Westbrook. Gerald Watkins, my supervisor, was a harried man in his 40s who seemed perpetually behind schedule. He assigned work with minimal instructions and even less feedback, clearly considering me an afterthought in his busy department. I rarely saw James at the office. When our paths did cross in hallways or the cafeteria, he acknowledged me with a curt nod, never stopping to chat. To his colleagues, I was just another employee, our relationship carefully concealed. At home, or rather in James's house, things remained strained. Amanda made pointed comments about my contribution to grocery expenses. James inquired about my job performance with the detached interest of a distant relative. Only the children provided warmth, though Amanda increasingly limited my time with them. "They need to focus on homework and activities," she would say. "Too many distractions affect their academic performance." The isolation both at work and in what should have been my home weighed heavily. I began taking lunch breaks in a small park across from the office building, finding solace in watching pigeons and people rather than sitting alone in the break room. It was during one of these solitary lunches 3 weeks into my employment that William Thompson approached my bench. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, holding a takeout container. Surprised, I gestured to the empty space beside me. "Please do." He sat with the ease of a man comfortable in his own skin. I've been hoping to run into you again. How are you finding Westbrook so far? Everyone has been very, I searched for a diplomatic word, professional. William chuckled. That's corporate speak for no one's been particularly friendly. Am I right? His directness was refreshing after weeks of carefully measured words. It's an adjustment, I admitted. After 30 years in elementary education, the corporate world feels like a foreign country. You were a teacher. Interest sparked in his eyes. What grade? Third grade mostly. 10 years at Wilson Elementary, then 20 at Lincoln. Noble profession, he said with genuine respect. My mother taught 5th grade for 40 years. She always said teachers shape the future, one child at a time. Your mother sounds wise. She was. A shadow of grief crossed his face. She passed 3 years ago. I'm sorry for your loss. He nodded acknowledgement. May I ask how you came to Westbrook? It's quite a career change. The question I'd been dreading. I considered another vague answer, but found myself craving honesty. My husband died 6 months ago. Financial circumstances forced me to sell our home. I moved in with James and his family. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. James felt I should contribute financially to the household. He arranged this position. William's expression remained neutral, though something flickered in his eyes. I see. And what position exactly did he arrange for you? Administrative support in operations, mostly filing data entry, making coffee. Making coffee? William repeated, his tone sharpening. With your background in education, I shrugged. I'm grateful for the opportunity. The words sounded hollow even to my own ears. William was silent for a moment, his lunch forgotten. Would you join me for tea in my office tomorrow afternoon? Say 3 o'clock, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. The invitation was unexpected. I'd need to check with Gerald. I'll handle Gerald, William interrupted smoothly. Just come to the executive floor at 3. After he left, I sat wondering about the strange encounter. Why would the CEO take an interest in a new entry-level employee? Was it curiosity about James's mother? Professional courtesy, or something else entirely? The following afternoon, I smoothed my hair and straightened my cardigan before taking the elevator to the executive floor. The atmosphere here was noticeably different: plush carpeting instead of laminate flooring, elegant artwork on walls instead of corporate motivational posters, and a hushed quality that contrasted with the bustling energy of lower floors. William's assistant, a poised woman named Patricia, greeted me warmly. Mr. Thompson is expecting you. Please go right in. The CEO's office was spacious but not ostentatious. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. William rose from behind his desk, gesturing to a comfortable seating area where a tea service awaited. Thank you for coming, Anne. Please make yourself comfortable. As he poured tea into fine china cups, I noted the family photos on a side table. William, with a woman I presumed was his late wife, children at various ages now grown. Milk sugar, he offered. Just milk, please. He handed me a cup, then sat across from me, his expression turning serious. I've been making some inquiries about your position here. My stomach knotted with anxiety. Have I done something wrong? Quite the contrary. Gerald says you're meticulous and efficient despite being given tasks well below your capabilities. William set his cup down. But that's not why I asked you here. I wanted to discuss the circumstances of your hiring. I'm not sure I understand. William leaned forward slightly. And did you know there's an opening for Director of Human Resources Development in our company? No, I wasn't aware. It's a new position focusing on training programs, employee education, professional development areas, where your background in education would be valuable. My confusion must have shown on my face. The position was approved last month, William continued. James, as Strategic Development VP, was involved in creating the role. I don't see what this has to do with me. William's expression turned grim. James never mentioned this position to you, did he? Never suggested you might be qualified? No. What would you say if I told you James has been advocating for his wife, Amanda, to fill this role? The pieces suddenly clicked into place with sickening clarity. Amanda has no background in education or training, I said slowly. She has an undergraduate business degree and worked in retail management for 3 years before Tyler was born, William confirmed. hardly qualified for a director-level position in HR development. My hands trembled slightly, causing the teacup to rattle against its saucer. Are you suggesting James brought me in for an entry-level position to keep me from being considered for this role? I'm not suggesting it. I know it for a fact. William's voice was gentle but firm. The hiring committee expressed interest in finding someone with an education background. Your son was concerned that if you learned about this position, you might apply, and frankly, you'd be far more qualified than Amanda. The betrayal cut deep. Not only had James seen me as a burden, he'd actively worked to prevent me from finding meaningful employment that matched my skills, all to benefit his wife. There's more, William said quietly. This isn't the first time James has manipulated situations to his advantage. He has a pattern of sidelining potential competitors within the company, taking credit for others' work, and using personal relationships for professional gain. Each word felt like another stone added to the weight on my chest. This calculating, manipulative person didn't sound like the son I'd raised. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely audible. 2 reasons, William replied. First, because you deserve to know the truth. And second, because I'd like to offer you a position more suited to your experience and abilities. I looked up startled. What position? Not the HR director role that requires corporate experience you don't have, but I've been considering creating a specialized training program for our younger employees. Many of them have technical skills but lack soft skills, communication, teamwork, problem solving. Who better to design such a program than someone with decades of teaching experience? You're offering me a job, a real job, not just filing papers. Precisely. As educational program consultant reporting directly to me, the salary would be significantly higher than your current position with actual benefits and growth potential. The offer was tempting, but doubt crept in. James won't be happy. James doesn't make hiring decisions for my direct reports, William stated firmly. But you should know accepting this position might create tension between you and your son. I thought about the basement room, Amanda's cold stares, James's dismissive attitude. There's already tension, I said quietly. This would just bring it to the surface. William nodded, understanding. Take some time to consider. The offer remains open. As I rode the elevator back to my floor, emotions warred within me. Anger at James's deception, hurt at his betrayal, excitement at William's offer, and fear about the consequences of accepting it. One thing was certain. I could no longer pretend all was well. The truth had been revealed, and decisions would need to be made. That night, I lay awake in my basement room, staring at the ceiling. The house above me was quiet, its occupants unaware that their carefully constructed dynamic was about to change forever. The following morning, I called William's office and accepted his offer. Something had shifted within me overnight, a reawakening of the strength and determination that had guided me through 3 decades of teaching, through challenging students and demanding parents, through budget cuts and educational reforms. Excellent, William said when I delivered my decision. I'll have HR prepare the paperwork immediately. You can start Monday in your new role. James will find out, I noted. Yes, he will, William acknowledged. How you handle that is your decision, but I recommend discretion until everything is official. For the remainder of the week, I continued my clerical duties, giving no indication of the impending change. At home, I began quiet preparations of a different sort. During lunch breaks, I researched apartment rentals in my price range. After work, I visited a bank across town and opened a new account, separate from the joint account James had insisted I use for transparency and household contributions. On Sunday afternoon, while James and Amanda took the children to a soccer match, I made phone calls to rental agents setting up viewings for the following weekend. By evening, I had a short list of modest but acceptable apartments within my soon-to-be increased budget. Monday arrived with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. I reported to HR early, signing new employment documents and receiving a badge with increased access privileges. By 9 o'clock, I was settling into a small but private office on the executive floor adjacent to the corporate training center. William stopped by mid-morning. Everything satisfactory. More than satisfactory, I assured him, gesturing to the window with an actual view, the new computer, the professional nameplate on my door. It's overwhelming, but in the best possible way. Your first project documents are in your email. Take time to review them, then we'll meet Wednesday to discuss implementation. No rush quality thinking is what I'm after. The confidence he placed in me, a newcomer to his corporate world, brought tears to my eyes after weeks of being treated as incompetent. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank me by exceeding expectations, he replied with a warm smile before departing. I spent the day absorbing company training materials, educational frameworks, and needs assessments. The work engaged my mind in ways filing and photocopying never had, reminding me of curriculum development from my teaching days. Shortly after 4, my office phone rang, James's extension flashing on the display. Word had traveled. "Hello, James," I answered calmly. "Where are you?" His voice was controlled but tight with anger. "Gerald said you've been transferred." "That's correct. I'm now working on the executive floor as an educational program consultant." Silence then. "In my building in 15 minutes. He hung up without waiting for a response. I took a deep breath, gathered my composure, and made my way to James's office in a different wing. His assistant eyed me curiously before waving me through to his corner office with its impressive view. James stood at the window, back rigid with tension. He turned as I entered, his expression thunderous. "What the hell is going on?" "I have accepted a new position that better utilizes my skills," I replied evenly. "Without discussing it with me first, I arranged your job here, Mother." "Yes, you did. An entry-level clerical position despite my advanced degree and 30 years of professional experience." His jaw tightened. "You don't have corporate experience, which is why I'm not in a director-level position, unlike what you were planning for Amanda." The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" "The Director of Human Resources Development position. The one you created and have been advocating for Amanda to fill despite her minimal qualifications." "Who told you that?" he demanded. "Does it matter?" "It's true, isn't it?" James ran a hand through his hair, momentarily looking like the frustrated teenage boy I remembered. "It's complicated, Mom. You don't understand corporate politics. I understand enough to know you deliberately placed me in a position far beneath my capabilities to prevent me from being considered for a role that might have interfered with your plans for Amanda." "That's ridiculous," he scoffed, but his eyes shifted away, the same tell he'd had since childhood when caught in a lie. "Is it, you needed me employed so I could contribute to the household, but not so successfully employed that I might become independent or, worse, interfere with your ambitions?" "You're my mother. I gave you a home when you had nowhere else to go." "A room in your basement," I corrected, "where I've been treated like an unwelcome houseguest rather than family." James paced, agitation visible in every movement. "So William Thompson offered you a job and suddenly you're an expert on corporate structures. He's using you to undermine me." "Not everything is about you, James. Mr. Thompson recognized my potential value to this company. He offered me a position based on my qualifications and experience. And you accepted without even discussing it with me." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "Like you discussed my original position with me before arranging it, or how you discussed with me your plans to have Amanda take a director role she's not qualified for." James slammed his hand on the desk. "This is completely different. You're right, it is, because I'm not going behind anyone's back. I'm accepting a legitimate offer for a position I'm qualified to fill." My son stared at me as if seeing me for the first time, not as his mother, but as an independent person with agency and ambition of my own. The realization clearly unsettled him. "This will create complications," he warned. "Having my mother working directly with the CEO, I imagine it will, especially for someone who's been taking credit for other people's work and manipulating colleagues." The words were harsh, but necessary. "Perhaps it's time for some honest evaluation of your professional ethics." James's expression hardened. "If that's how you feel, maybe our living arrangement needs reconsideration as well." The threat didn't surprise me. In fact, it aligned perfectly with my own plans. "I agree, which is why I've been looking at apartments. I plan to move out by the end of the month." This caught him off guard. "Move out to where, on what money?" "My new position comes with a significant salary increase, enough for a modest apartment and living expenses." For a moment, genuine concern flickered across his face. "Mom, you can't live alone. You just lost Dad. You don't know the first thing about managing on your own." I managed a classroom of 30 children for decades. I think I can manage an apartment and a checkbook. I softened my tone slightly. James, this isn't about rejecting you or your family. It's about reclaiming my independence and dignity. William put you up to this? He accused, grasping for explanations that placed blame elsewhere. No one put me up to anything. For the first time since your father died, I'm making choices based on what I need, not what others expect of me. Our conversation ended in a stalemate, with James warning me I was making a mistake and would regret cutting ties with family. I left his office exhausted but resolute. The confrontation had been painful but necessary, the first step in reclaiming my life. That evening, I returned to James's house to find Amanda waiting, her expression cold with fury. James called. He told me about your betrayal. Accepting a job isn't betrayal, Amanda. You've been conspiring with William Thompson against your own son. I sighed, too tired for another emotional battle. I've accepted employment appropriate to my qualifications, that's all. After everything we've done for you, she continued, voice rising. Taking you in, feeding you, giving you a roof over your head, and reminding me daily of your generosity, I interrupted. Yes, I'm well aware of the scorekeeping that goes on in this house. Her eyes widened at my directness. I'd always been careful, deferential, grateful. This new assertion of independence clearly caught her off guard. I'll be moving out at the end of the month, I informed her. You'll have your house back to yourselves, and I'll have the fresh start I need. What about the children? For the first time, genuine emotion cracked through her polished veneer. They love having you here. I'll be 15 minutes away, not across the country. They can visit whenever they want. I paused, adding pointedly, assuming they're allowed to. Amanda's lips pressed into a thin line. We'll see what James has to say about that. As I descended to my basement room, I felt lighter despite the tension. The truth was, out plans were in motion, and for the first time in months, I was steering my own course, rather than being carried along by others' decisions. Over the next few weeks, my life transformed at a dizzying pace. At work, I immersed myself in creating Westbrook's first comprehensive employee development program. William gave me free rein to design curriculum assessment tools and implementation strategies. For the first time since Harold's death, I felt professionally fulfilled, my expertise valued, and my contributions recognized. My relationship with James remained strained. We avoided each other at the office, and at home he maintained a cold distance. Amanda was icily polite when necessary, but otherwise treated me as if I'd become invisible. Only the children acted normally, though they sensed the tension. Are you mad at Daddy? Emma asked one evening as I helped her with spelling homework. No, sweetheart. Grown-ups sometimes have different ideas about things. It doesn't mean they're angry with each other. Then why don't you talk anymore? And why is Mommy always making that face when your name comes up? Out of the mouths of babes. Sometimes families go through difficult times, but I want you to know that no matter what, I love you and Tyler very much. Even when you move to your new place. News traveled fast. Especially then. You can visit me anytime you want. I'll have a special drawer just for your things, and we can bake cookies whenever you come over. 2 weeks after accepting my new position, I signed a lease on a one-bedroom apartment in a modest building 20 minutes from Westbrook. The space was small but bright, with large windows and a tiny balcony overlooking a community garden. After months in a basement room, the sunlight alone felt like a luxury. William surprised me by organizing a small group of colleagues to help with my move. Consider it a workplace team-building exercise, he said with a wink when I protested the imposition. On moving day, I packed my belongings while James and Amanda took the children to a family function, their absence a deliberate statement. As I placed the last items in boxes, I felt a mixture of sadness and liberation. This house had never become home, but leaving still meant acknowledging the fracture in my relationship with my only child. My new colleagues arrived with coffee and donuts, turning the potentially melancholy task into something approaching festive. Among them was Melissa from my old department, who had sought me out after my promotion. I've been wanting to change careers, she confided, as we carried boxes. Maybe from accounting to something in training. Would you mentor me? The request warmed my heart, my first workplace friendship forming a chance to guide someone as I'd done with students for decades. By afternoon, my meager possessions were installed in the apartment. William arrived last, bearing a potted peace lily. A housewarming tradition in my family, he explained. May it bring tranquility to your new home. As my colleagues departed with promises of a proper housewarming later, William lingered. How are you feeling? He asked once we were alone. Overwhelmed, grateful, terrified, excited. I laughed softly. All at once. That sounds about right for new beginnings. He glanced around the small living room. It suits you, unpretentious but with character. We sat on my second-hand sofa, enjoying the quiet after the busy day. William's presence was comfortable, his conversation easy. I realized with surprise that despite our age similarity, this was the first time I'd spent social time with a man since Harold's death. Will James come around? William asked gently. I sighed, considering the question. I don't know, he's hurt and angry, his pride is wounded, and he's been enabled in his sense of entitlement for too long. By Amanda, by both of us, I admitted. Harold and I wanted to give him everything we never had. Somewhere along the way that morphed into him, expecting everything to be given to him. Children rarely turn out exactly as we envision, William observed. My daughter went through a phase where she barely spoke to me for 3 years. Now she calls twice a week. The comment offered a glimmer of hope that reconciliation might be possible given time and space. As William prepared to leave, he hesitated at the door. Would you consider having dinner with me next weekend, not as colleagues, but... He trailed off suddenly, seeming less sure of himself than the confident CEO I'd come to know. As friends, I suggested, my heart beating unexpectedly faster. To start with, he replied with a warm smile. I've enjoyed our conversations. I'd like to have more of them outside the office. After he left, I stood in the center of my new apartment, surrounded by boxes waiting to be unpacked. Life waiting to be rebuilt. For the first time in months, the future looked not just bearable, but potentially bright. The following week brought an unexpected visitor to my office, Tyler, escorted by William's assistant. He arrived at reception asking for you, Patricia explained. Security called me when they realized who he was. Grandma, I rode the bus all by myself, Tyler announced proudly. After thanking Patricia, I closed my office door for privacy. Tyler, does your mother know you're here? His expression turned guilty. Not exactly. She thinks I'm at Jason's house after school. Sweetheart, she'll be worried when she finds out. I just wanted to see your new job and your new house, he explained. Dad says we're not supposed to visit you, but that's dumb. You're still my grandma. My heart clenched at this confirmation of James's attempt to separate me from my grandchildren. Your dad is upset with me right now, but he shouldn't put you in the middle of adult problems. Are you going to send me home? I'm going to call your mother and tell her you're safe with me. Then, if she agrees, I'll show you my office and my apartment before taking you home. The phone call with Amanda was tense but civil. To my surprise, she agreed to let Tyler stay with me until dinner time. He's been miserable since you left, she admitted reluctantly. Maybe seeing you will settle him down. I showed Tyler around the executive floor, introduced him to William, who solemnly shook his hand, man to man, and then took him to my apartment where he explored every corner with the curiosity of a 10-year-old. It's small, he observed. Yes, but it's mine. And there's a park across the street with a great climbing structure. Before taking him home, I sat him down for a serious conversation. Tyler, I don't want you traveling alone like this again. It's not safe, and it puts everyone in a difficult position. But how will I see you? I'm going to talk to your parents about setting up regular visits, and if that doesn't work immediately, I'll keep trying, but no more secret bus rides. Okay? He nodded reluctantly. Promise you won't forget about me and Emma. Never. I vowed, hugging him tight. You're my grandchildren forever, no matter what. When I dropped Tyler at James's house, my son appeared in the doorway, expression guarded. Mother. James. I kept my tone neutral. Tyler visited me at work today. He took the bus alone. Concern flashed across his face. He what? He's fine. I've explained why he shouldn't do that again. But James, the children miss me. Keeping them away isn't fair to them. For a moment, the defensive mask slipped, revealing uncertainty. We'll discuss it, he said finally. Amanda and I will talk. It wasn't much, but it was the first crack in the wall between us. As I drove away, I felt a tentative hope that healing might eventually be possible. The next evening, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened it, James stood there looking uncomfortable. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, heart racing. He entered slowly, surveying the apartment with an unreadable expression. "It's smaller than I expected," he commented. "It's what I need right now." He nodded, still standing awkwardly in the entryway. "Tyler won't stop talking about his adventure yesterday. Emma's jealous she missed out." "They're welcome here any time." James sighed heavily. "That's partly why I came. Amanda and I discussed it, and we're willing to set up regular visits. Weekends, maybe one afternoon a week." "Thank you," I said simply, recognizing the concession for what it was, a small olive branch. "I also came to say," he paused, struggling, "I haven't handled things well since Dad died, since you moved in, any of it." "No," I agreed quietly. "You haven't. I was trying to protect my family, my position, by treating your mother as a burden and a potential threat." He flinched at the directness, but didn't deny it. "I've made mistakes." "Yes, you have. Serious ones. Can we start over somehow?" I studied my son, this complicated man who had grown so far from the child I'd raised, yet still carried echoes of that boy in his expressions, his mannerisms. "Not over, James. We can't erase what's happened, but forward, perhaps, slowly." "I'd like that," he said, and for the first time in months, his smile reached his eyes. As he turned to leave, he added, "By the way, William Thompson invited Amanda and me to dinner next week, said he wanted to clear the air professionally." I hid my smile. William hadn't mentioned this to me, but I recognized the strategic move to begin healing workplace relationships as well. "That sounds like a positive step," I replied neutrally. After James left, I stood at my window watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of possibility. My life had been upended, rearranged, and rebuilt in ways I never could have imagined 6 months ago. The journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and hurt, but standing in my own space, directing my own future, I felt stronger than I had in years. The phone rang, William calling to confirm our dinner plans for Saturday. As we talked, I found myself laughing genuinely, the weight of recent months lifting further with each moment of connection. Harold would always be the great love of my life, but perhaps there was room for new joy, new relationships, new purpose in this unexpected chapter. Perhaps being pushed to the edge of my comfortable existence was exactly what I needed to discover the resilience and capacity for renewal that had been within me all along. 6 months later, I stood in my expanded office at Westbrook, reviewing the success metrics from the first cohort of employees to complete my training program. Satisfaction rates were high. Manager feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and several participants had already received promotions partially attributed to skills gained through the curriculum. "Celebrating your triumph?" William asked from the doorway, a warm smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Just reviewing the data," I replied modestly, though pride swelled within me. "The results are encouraging." "Encouraging? They're exceptional." He entered, closing the door behind him. The board was impressed. "They've approved expanding the program company-wide with an increased budget and staff." "That's wonderful news." My mind raced with possibilities. Additional trainers, enhanced materials, maybe even a dedicated training facility. "You'll need to hire a small team," William continued. "I've already approved 3 positions to start." My journey from unwanted houseguest to department head had been swift and unexpected. Each day brought new challenges, but also new confidence as I applied my educational expertise to the corporate world. My personal life had flourished alongside my professional renaissance. William and I had moved beyond friendship to a deepening relationship, taking things slowly respectful of our individual grief journeys, but finding increasing joy in shared experiences. My apartment had become a true home, decorated with carefully chosen pieces that reflected my personality rather than blending into someone else's aesthetic. On weekends, Tyler and Emma stayed over sleeping on a pull-out sofa in the living room that they considered a great adventure. Relations with James had gradually improved. Our early tentative conversations had evolved into regular family dinners, sometimes at my apartment, sometimes at a neutral restaurant. Amanda remained reserved but civil, especially after William orchestrated a professional detente that included finding her a suitable position in marketing that better matched her retail background. One Saturday evening, after the children had returned to James and Amanda's, William and I sat on my small balcony enjoying the spring evening. "I have something to ask you," he said, reaching for my hand. My heart quickened. Over recent months, our relationship had grown increasingly serious, but we'd been careful not to rush. "I'm not proposing marriage," he clarified with a gentle smile, reading my expression. "Not yet, anyway, but I am proposing a change." "What kind of change?" "My house is too big for one person. Your apartment, while charming, is too small for weekend grandchildren visits and the book collection you're accumulating." I laughed, glancing at the bookcases now lining my living room walls. "What would you think about us finding a place together? Something that's ours, not mine, you're moving into, or yours, I'm crowding." The suggestion both excited and terrified me. "Are you sure it's a big step?" "At our age, Anne, we don't have time for unnecessary caution. I know what makes me happy, and that's being with you." Tears welled in my eyes as I squeezed his hand. "I'd like that very much." Later that week, I invited James for coffee, feeling he should hear about this development directly from me. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our workplaces. "You're moving in with William," he repeated after I shared the news. "We're finding a place together, yes. Something that works for both of us, with room for the children to visit comfortably." James stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "He makes you happy." "He does. He respects me, values my opinions, encourages my independence." "Unlike how I treated you." James acknowledged the months having brought increased self-awareness. "We've moved past that," I assured him. "But yes, it's different. Dad would want this for you, you know. He'd want you to be happy again." The comment touched me deeply. "Thank you for saying that." "I was thinking," James continued hesitantly, "maybe we could have a family dinner to celebrate at our house. Amanda's idea, actually." This unexpected olive branch from Amanda surprised and moved me. "We'd love that." As our coffee meeting ended, James hugged me, a real embrace, not the perfunctory gesture that had become our norm. "I'm proud of you, Mom," he whispered, "for standing up for yourself, for not letting me get away with how I treated you." "We all make mistakes," I replied softly. "The important thing is learning from them." Walking back to my office, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From devastation to rebirth, from dependency to strength, from isolation to connection. None of it would have happened if James hadn't uttered those painful words that pushed me toward change. "I don't want to feed an extra mouth." Those words, meant to diminish me, had instead set me free. They had forced me to rediscover my own value, to fight for my dignity, to build a new life on my own terms. Sometimes the most hurtful moments become the most transformative if we find the courage to use them as catalysts rather than anchors. That evening, as William and I browsed real estate listings for our future home, I felt profound gratitude for the difficult path that had led me here. Life after 55 had turned out to be not an ending, but a beginning rich with possibilities I never could have imagined during those dark days in my son's basement. If you're watching this and facing your own midlife reinvention, remember that it's never too late to start again. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a major setback? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Please like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need encouragement today. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the words meant to break you become the foundation upon which you build something beautiful.